He was one of the greats. He could stand at the pinnacle of adventuring. That was all they could think. The party began pitching camp long before the sun would go down. Aints took the wooden rods he was given. He stood them up around the perimeter of their site. They had to fit the cart inside, so the campsite was fairly large, more than 20 yards across. Once he hammered the 4 posts into the dirt, he would string a black silk thread around them. This would make an enclosure. Then he would make a knot in the thread. He would pull it right near the opening to their tent. Finally, he would hang up a big bell to finish it off. In other words, he was cordoning off their campsite. He was also setting up a noisy alarm. Narbrul stood behind him as he was knocking in the posts. Narbrul was supposed to have something else to do. He guessed it was fine if she finished that already. If that guy pissed her off again, he may have to have a word with him. Aints decided this as he went to turn around. Then Narbrul spoke in a dark voice. It sounded as if she was suppressing her rage. "Mr. Momon, you shouldn't have to do such menial tasks as these." Seeing her anger, Aints sighed slightly. Then he looked around and lowered his voice. "Everyone is pitching in to set up camp. Do you think they would be okay with just me sitting around? Didn't you show them your magnificent combat ability? Everyone has their strengths. This kind of work should be left to the weak. Don't be like that. We do need to stand out as powerful, but I don't want people to think we're arrogant. You need to keep an eye on your behavior too." Narbrul nodded, showing she understood, but it was plain she wasn't convinced. She simply took his order. He was happy her overwhelming devotion to him beat down her own dissatisfaction, but he wondered if that was really sustainable. Aints was actually enjoying his stay in the outdoors. It had been impossible in the real world, of course. He hadn't been able to do this even in the fantasy world of Yggdrasil, so it was all new and surprising. It also reminded him of going on quests in Yggdrasil, though it did take a little too long to get from place to place here. If only he had been transporting here instead of the great tomb of Nazareth, he would probably have just traveled around without a care in the world. He was undead, so he didn't need food or drink. He didn't even need to breathe. He could climb the far-off mountains empty-handed. He could also dive to the deepest ocean depths. He would have simply enjoyed all the unfamiliar scenery the world had to offer, but as long as his guildmates' precious creations were obeying him, he had to live up to their loyalty. He had to act as the ruler of the great tomb. Shaking off his memories, Aints devoted himself to his task once more. Once all 4 posts were sunk deep enough, he strung the thread tightly around them. Then he returned to the marquee tent. "Thanks." "Oh, no problem," Lukrut said from inside, without even looking up. It wasn't necessarily a courteous gesture, but he wasn't slacking off either. He'd been digging a hole and building an oven around it for a while. Ninya was walking the perimeter, chanting a spell. Alarm was a spell one could cast as a precaution. He said it couldn't cover a very large area, but it was worth using just in case. Aints had squinted. This was magic that hadn't existed in Yggdrasil. Collecting spells that didn't exist in Yggdrasil was one of the jobs he'd given the others. But as a caster, unfamiliar magic awakened his greed. The magic Ninya used was, like Aints', a magical type. The spells even looked just like the ones in Yggdrasil. Aints had been doing something only characters with the racial skill Black Wisdom could do to increase the number of spells he could acquire. If he performed a sacrifice ritual, could he get spells that were NT in Yggdrasil? Or was there another way? There were so many things he didn't know. Ninya had realized Aints was staring. Although he had warmed up a little since they first met, he still wore a forced smile when he came over. "You don't need to watch so closely. It's not such an interesting spell, is it? I am extremely curious about magic, so I take a great deal of interest in what you do, Ninya." "Really? But Nabe is a way better caster than me. But you can use spells she can." Aints saw Narbrul lower her head slightly. He could tell from the corner of his eye that she was more jealous than embarrassed. "I'd like to be able to use magic like you can." "You want to learn magic, even though you're that good with a sword? You're a hard worker, Momon. Although I suppose that attitude makes you a model adventurer." Lukrut chimed in, without looking up from the oven he was building. "Magic isn't something you can just learn overnight. First you gotta get this connection to the world thing. But the only ones who can do that so easily are the ones who have a natural knack for it. I heard if you don't, all you can do is study little by little till you get the feel." Ninya's smile vanished and was replaced by a serious expression. Momon, I think you have the aptitude. I get the feeling you ray different from normal people. There is something about you that just doesn't exist among humans. Ain't's non-existent heart skipped a beat. It sounded almost like Ninya had vaguely realized he was an undead. He was using illusions and anti-intelligence magic, but it was plenty possible that unfamiliar spells or special abilities could strip off his mask. He cautiously asked, "Oh, I know I am strong, but I don't think it is to a degree that is non-existent among humans. I showed you my face, right? It is not a question of looks, more just that amount of power is not human. You were killing ogres in one hit. I guess men are about power and not looks, huh? I mean, you got a babe like Nabe with you." Considering Lukrut's remarks with a level head, it seemed like the illusionary face he created was being called ugly. When he thought about the people he had met so far, he had to agree. There is too much beauty in this world. You can look at anybody in the street, and they have nice, regular features. I used to consider my face worthy of a supporting role, but now I wonder if I'd even make the bill. Faces aside, Lukrut is right. The ones they call heroes are on another level from ordinary humans. That really sunk in for me today. I don't think I am a hero, though. I am not fishing for compliments here. Ain't, answered Ninya, pretending to be flustered while suppressing his sigh of relief. Would you like to come meet the person who taught me? My teacher has the talent of being able to tell how much natural aptitude someone has. For magical magic, it is apparently even possible to know what tier. Actually, there is something I've been wondering, isn't that the same talent that the Empire's head wizard has? Yes, it is the same one. Ain't couldn't let this chance pass. He could get more info if he pressed. What kind of ability is it, exactly? The way my teacher explains it, every caster has a magic aura. The more powerful they are, the bigger the aura. My teacher has the power to see those auras. Ninya paused, then continued. Ain't's voice almost went too deep, but he controlled himself and replied normally. My teacher collects kids with good auras and trains them. Ninya said he had been found in just that way. Ain't's made appropriate noises, inwardly cursing that such a talent existed. It could mean trouble. So if I think I'd like to use magic, what should I do first? Maybe finding a proper teacher is a good place to start. So maybe I could be your disciple? Ain't's thought for a moment. I think it'd be better to find someone stronger than me. But the thing is, in the kingdom almost all the schools are private, and if you are not affiliated with any of the magic-related guilds, you can get in. The people who do get in are usually kids, because their brains are still malleable. To get in at your age, you have to have someone pretty important pulling strings for you. In comparison, the Empire has a solid magic academy. The theocracy also offers some fairly high-level education in faith magic, of course. Aha. Is it pretty easy to get into the Empire's Magic Academy? It would probably be pretty hard, actually. The Academy is a facility mandated by state policy. So for a non-national, I see, and about you being my disciple, my apologies, but I have something I want to do, so I don't have time to spend on that. Ninya's face darkened. There was something sinister and threatening in his expression, a thinly veiled hostility. Guess I should steer clear of that subject. It doesn't seem like there is any benefit to pressing him anyway. Just as Ain't made that decision, Lukrut casually interrupted. Hey, sorry to bug you in the middle of your chat, but food is almost ready. Could you go get the other three? I'll go, Momon, or you leaving Nabe. Wouldn't you rather make this meal the fruit of our love? Come cook with me. Drop dead, centipede. Or do you want me to force feed you boiling oil so you can talk any more nonsense? Would you give it a rest, Nabe? I am going with you, sir. Understood. Ain't thanked Ninya before leaving the tent and walking over to where two others were sitting on the ground. Peter and Dine were completely absorbed in inspecting the weapons they had used earlier. They applied oil to the swords to prevent rust and checked all the weapons carefully for bends. There was fresh damage to their armor. The swords had dings from clashing with the goblins' weapons. These makeshift repairs were standard. One's life could depend on them. They were focusing so hard Ain't almost didn't want to interrupt. After telling those two dinner was ready, he let Enfira know as well. She was tending to the horses a little ways away. The sun was just about to disappear below the horizon. Its evening rays had dyed the sky crimson when dinner began. Stew flavored with smoked and salted meat was ladled into everyone's bowl. That plus crusty bread and dried figs, along with walnuts and other nuts, made up the night's meal. Aints looked down at the salty-seeming soup in his bowl. He couldn't feel the heat of it through his gauntlets. Considering everyone was eating without waiting for it to cool, it must have been just the right temperature. Now what? Aints was undead. His body couldn't eat or drink. He could create illusions to make it look like he had a body. But as long as he was made of bones and had a bottomless mouth, any soup he put in would spill right out. There was no way he could let them see that. Unfamiliar food in an unfamiliar land, despite how simple everything was, Aints thought it a shame that he couldn't eat any. He had pretty much lost the desire for food entirely. But sure enough, when a bunch of tasty-looking dishes were laid out, his curiosity was piqued. He was rather frustrated he couldn't eat. It was the first time since coming to this world that he regretted being in his new body. "Oh, is there something you don't like about it?" Luckrut asked, since Aints wasn't touching his food. "No, it's not that. There's a specific reason." "Oh yeah, okay then. Don't feel like you have to force yourself to eat it. Actually, it's mealtime and all. What about taking off that helmet? It's against my religion. There is a rule that one must not eat in a party of 4 or more on a day one has taken a life." "Huh, you believe in some strange stuff, Momon, but I guess the world is a big place. I can believe there's a teaching about how many people you can eat with on a day you kill something. Once they found out it was to do with religion, everyone's suspicious looks softened. Religion has the potential to cause trouble in this world too." Mormon prayed to his non-existent God to thank him for helping him out of that situation. Then he asked Peter a question to change the subject. "Oh, you guys are called the Swords of Darkness, but none of you have terribly dark-looking swords." Peter had a long sword that was not terribly magical. Luckrut had a bow, Dine had a mace, and Ninya had a staff. Nobody had a black or dark-colored sword. Peter's sword and Luckrut's sub-weapon, a short sword, were close in shape, but nowhere near the right color. It was possible to change a sword's color by mixing special powder into the metal, so it would be easy enough to make a sword look dark. It was actually strange that none of them had one. "Oh, that." An awkward smile played across Luckrut's face, like he'd been reminded of some past embarrassment. Ninya's face was turning red, a shade distinctly different from the reflected light of the fire. "That's what Ninya wanted. Please stop. I was young and stupid. You have nothing to be ashamed of. It's important to dream big. Dine, would you give me a break?" Seriously, the other Swords of Darkness chuckled warmly at him. Ninya looked like he was about to start writhing from the awkwardness of it all. The name seemed to have some special meaning for the group. We were named after 4 swords that belonged to one of the 13 heroes a long time ago," Peter declared, grinning from ear to ear. He didn't seem like he was going to add anything else. "That's great, but I have no idea what you're talking about. I know the 13 heroes were super powerful heroes who destroyed evil spirits that were terrorizing the land 200 years ago. But I don't know who they all were and what kind of gear they had. Is that bad, or should I just say, huh?" While Aints was wavering, Narbril spoke up from beside him. "Who were they?" "Nice." Aints struck a victory pose in his head, but the Swords of Darkness seemed unsettled. The reality of someone not knowing magical weapons so famous they had named their whole team after them must have been a shock. "You haven't heard of them, Nabe?" "Well, I guess you wouldn't have. Some people think of the 13 heroes as evil or say they had demon blood. They were deliberately left out of the sagas, and people say the powers they had were insane. The Swords of Darkness are 4 swords that belong to one of the heroes called the Black Knight. Demonic sword Kilainuram gives off dark energy. Kanka sword Korakwedava is said to inflict wounds that never heal. Death sword Sufis takes your life if it so much as scratches you. An evil sword Humoris has a special ability that is unclear." Narbril seemed to have lost interest, and everyone smiled, embarrassed. But Aints cocked his head a bit. He had heard of those special abilities somewhere before. After thinking about it, a vampire came to mind. Sholtia Bloodfallen had a class called Cursed Knight that had skills just like that. The Cursed Knight was a priest knight sullied with a curse and one of the more powerful classes in Yggdrasil. It was also heavily penalized, so it wasn't very popular. Among the skills it could acquire were the ability to give off a wave of darkness, inflict wounds that couldn't be cured except with the strongest healing magic, and cast an Instadath curse. Aints narrowed his illusionary eyes. It couldn't be a coincidence. It was possible that the Swords of Darkness had effects that matched Cursed Knight skills. But there seemed to be a bigger chance that the hero who had wielded them was a Cursed Knight. To meet the minimum requirements to be a Cursed Knight, one needed a cumulative class level of at least 60. This meant that this Black Knight person had to be at least level 60. No, to have all those skills, he'd have to be at least 70. That would mean that the evil spirits he fought must have been about the same level. But Nigun had been shouting about how the angel he summoned with Dominion authority had defeated an evil spirit like it was a big deal. So ain't wasn't sure how the power balance worked. If he went by the information he collected so far, it made the most sense to assume that evil spirits came at all kinds of power levels, but he wouldn't know the truth unless he either got his hands on those swords or met the hero. Aints was lost in thought when the party's conversation continued. He turned his attention back to them with a start. It would be a waste to miss the chance to get more information. Our ultimate goal is to find them. There are a lot of weapons that are said to be legends, but these we know for sure exist. Well, I guess we don't know if they still exist. Oh, I know of one person who has a sword of darkness. Enfirer casually dropped a bomb, and they all turned to face him as if he physically yanked them. Who? Whoa, are you serious? So there's only 3 left. HRM. Now there won't be enough to go around. Enfirer responded timidly, it's the leader of that group of adventurers called the Blue Roses. Those guys. They ray adamantite. I guess we should just give up then. Indeed, there are still 3 left, so let us get strong enough to get all of those. Yeah, if one is real, the others must be too. I hope they ray hidden somewhere no one will find them before we do. Ninya, write that in your journal so we don't forget. I will. But actually my journal is personal, so couldn't you write it down yourself? It's good to make a physical record for posterity. I don't think that's the issue, Dine. Anyhow, we have that other thing already. Other thing, this Mormon. Peter took a dagger with 4 small jewels inlaid in its handle out of his breast pocket and drew it. The blade was black. The idea is to have this as our symbol until we get the real ones. What if we called ourselves Blades of Darkness instead of Swords of Darkness? Then there's no real or fake, and this thing can symbolize us properly. For once, Luckrat, you have a point. The Swords of Darkness all laughed together, like the group of good friends they were. Even Ain't smiled. They must have felt the same way toward that dagger as he did toward the staff that symbolized his guild. Soon the conversation became more relaxed, suitable for mealtime. Since there were more of the Swords of Darkness, they took the lead. They skillfully bounced topics off of Aints, Narbarrel, and Enfirer. Aints participated, but he still felt a wall between himself and the swords. He also felt out of step. He always had to speak vaguely to conceal how little he knew about the world. This led him to talk less. It was a vicious circle. Whenever someone asked Narbarrel something, she answered in a way that ended further discussion. So they gradually stopped bothering her. Enfirer was doing fine. He was a human who actually lived in this world, but Aints felt the boy had social skills far superior to his own. Enfirer always found ingenious ways to keep the conversation moving. He had a knack for reading the mood. Who cares? He had his old friends. Aints sulked while he watched the harmonious bunch chat in the glow of the fire. Perhaps it was only natural for people who risked their lives together. They really did get along well. Enfirer also looked on, wishing he could share in such a friendship. Aints thought of his old friends and got so jealous he loudly ground his teeth beneath his helmet. It used to be like this for me too. You all get along so well. Is that normal for adventurer teams? I think so. Probably because we trust one another with our lives. It's dangerous to adventure with people if you don't know what they ray thinking or can tell what they LL do. So before you know it, you ray all suddenly getting along. Oh yeah, and we don't have girls on our team. I heard if you do, you end up fighting. Yeah. Ninya smiled with a nuance that was hard to pin down and continued. If we did have a girl, I bet you'd be the first one to cause problems. But I think it has to do with our goal. Well, I mean, that we have a solid one. Peter and the others nodded in agreement. Yeah, that must be part of it. It's amazing how different it feels when everyone's aims are aligned. Huh, did you used to have a team too, Momon? Enfirer's curiosity put Aints at a loss for words, but he realized there was no need to tiptoe around this topic. Well, they were NT adventurers exactly, but he remembered his old friends. It was no wonder his voice started to sound a bit heavy and gloomy. Becoming an undead, didn't he stop all of his mental processes, and his strongest emotions were about those friends? Sensing something in his reply, no one pushed further. A curtain of silence fell. It was so quiet it was as if there were no one else in the world. Aints looked up at the stars that had come out to twinkle. Back when I was weak, a pure white holy knight with a sword and a shield saved me. Under his wing, I made 4 more friends. Then we picked up 3 more weaklings, like I had been, for a total of 9.